All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the weekly webinar. We had a Thanksgiving last week. Hope everyone had a great time with your families in whatever way that you might have observed that holiday. It's good to see you again for what is our penultimate, second to last session of the weekly webinar for 2022, not forever. So we'll have one more webinar on 12/12, Thursday, December 12th next week, and then we'll have a couple weeks off to regroup and enjoy some holiday time. And then we'll be back on the 9th, I believe it is, of January. And we will continue to send you notices for My Alliance to let you know what's going on, what's happening. So never fear about that. Looks like everybody is muted. Thank you for doing that while our speakers and I are having a conversation. If you need closed captioning, feel free to enable the show captions button, which is at the bottom of your screen. We are recording, and this will be available for future watching later this evening. And feel free to use the chat during our time together if you have questions or comments for our presenters today. So with that, I'm happy to introduce Melissa Curry and Lindsay Northup from the KU-ADRC's Cognitive Care Network. These are our social worker superheroes who provide great resources and support to lots of people. And they're going to tell you more than I will about that. So I will welcome you both. Thank you for responding to the call. And we're going to I don't want to say we are going to have a conversation. I got some questions for you all, and the audience may have some questions for you too. And I will, while we're meeting, drop some links in the chat for how you can learn more about the CCN, how you can watch the movie Why, if somehow you have not done that yet. And if you're looking for a support group or other resources, how you can get those from us. So Lindsay and Melissa, to start us off, I described you all as social workers, and I also have on my, I don't know how well anybody can see this, I have my KU School of Social Welfare shirt on today in your and my honor, since that's a great alma mater. So tell us, what is this CCN? What is the Cognitive Care Network? What do you all do?
Well, yeah, so CCN could stand for two things, Cognitive Care Network or Cognitive Care Navigator. So we are a team of social workers. We also have a nurse navigator that works with us. I like to introduce myself to families as an additional part of their support team. We work with the physicians, the nurse practitioners, the PAs. I mean, we're really a part of the multidisciplinary team within the KU Memory Clinic, but also within the community clinics that we partner with. Which Lindsay could speak more to than myself. I am strictly a part of the memory clinic as one of the social workers, but we aim to help families navigate this new normal. We want to focus on emotional well-being, and we want to focus on the whole person. And there's some hard conversations, when you get a diagnosis with cognitive challenges. And so our goal is, again, really to support, connect to resources, and have those open, honest, non-judgmental conversations about, what the families are dealing with.
Yeah, kind of going off of what Melissa said, a large part of our role as being part of this interdisciplinary team is just disease navigation and education, kind of like Melissa said, supplementing some of that support. We know that those neurology visits here at the office can be kind of spread out, every 6 months to a year. So we are a great resource to be utilizing in the meantime. We work on communication approaches with families, behavioral interventions, things like that. So there's a whole spectrum of things that our team provides. And I believe there's 10 social workers, I think. We have one nurse, and then currently we usually have at least a student or two from who's a graduate level from the School of Social Welfare. And right now we have two of those. So
Wonderful. It's a great team. I know I can say that. So tell us more, Lindsay and Melissa, about who can receive support or services from the CCN team.
yeah, so our services are considered dementia specialized. And so we really don't discriminate on who we can serve. We work with pretty much anyone whose lives dementia has touched. So that could be, yourself as the person with the diagnosis. That could be a spouse, an adult child, a sibling. Um, so we work with all sorts of people. You also don't have to be local to receive our services. You don't have to be in the KC Metro where our office is located. We work with patients and families across the entire state of Kansas. And we are able to meet with people not only in person, but via Zoom video call, phone call, email. So if there's a will, there's a way we can get connected.
Lindsay, do you let people from the other side of any of the state lines talk to you?
Of course
I
I do.
think so.
I don't
Good.
discriminate.
No discrimination. You did say that. So
That's right. It's
tigers
against
and
the social work code of ethics,
that's right.
so
I signed that code of ethics. That's
that's
right. So
right.
tigers and corn huskers and let's not start naming names, I guess, but other folks can have information. And we have Ann in the chat who is from Lincoln, Nebraska. So yes, it sounds like you all are very inclusive
I've
in
had
terms of what you're
clients in
doing.
California and Idaho. I mean, I've had some people join support group. Lindsay and I also, actually, I would say every CCN has a support group that they facilitate. So that's something we do as well. And we definitely don't discriminate in those, especially, of course, the ones via Zoom. Those are available for anybody. So.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're taking advantage of all the tools we have in terms of technology and support. So great. We've got a question in the chat that Lindsay and Melissa, I don't think I had this question explicitly on my list, although I was hoping you would answer it. So Anne is asking in the chat, are your services, let me make sure I get it right, are your services free?
That's a
Oh,
great
it's in the
question.
chat. Sorry, Anne, that was just to me, but I'm going to ask it for everybody.
Yeah, actually, yeah, we work with families for no cost. Now, that being said, we do have our chronic case management program where we can work with families and have, I would say, just more regularly scheduled contact. That is monthly contact, whether in person, via Zoom or phone, to offer that support. What I like about that CCM program, that chronic case management program, it's billed through Medicare. So for many people, they won't really receive much of a bill for it. It's dependent on their plan, but the providers are, I would say, more heavily involved in our contact with those monthly contacts. So it's just a way to keep the providers up to date, again, between that kind of 6 to 8 month time frame that I'd say most people on average, have between doctor's visits. So yes, the services are free, but we can also do the CCM to just get some additional supports in place, and that is billed through Medicare. So.
That's great. If someone is not a Medicare beneficiary, they have a different kind of insurance, what happens then?
Then we work with you for free. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay, you all are ready. I can't throw you any curveballs or anything. I
No,
love it.
just wait.
Okay.
The hour is young. So,
Yes, yes. Okay. So, let's say someone has been to the memory clinic at KU and they've talked to one of the great clinicians there and they're just waiting to get an appointment or waiting for another appointment or a diagnosis. They're just waiting for the next thing to happen. What
Mhm.
should they do while they wait?
Um, Easier said than done. Try not to panic. So when we're not clear on diagnosis yet and maybe don't have a ton of background information on what neurodegenerative process is occurring, we really like to go back to those just kind of best practices that support brain health, right? So that's going to be things like really being intentional with diet and exercise, and any physician is going to tell you that. But in addition to those things, really making sure that you're getting adequate sleep, that you're staying engaged with your friends and family members and activities and things like that. Um, Making sure that any hearing or sleep or mood concerns are being addressed. Those three things can sometimes masquerade and look like dementia symptoms. And so those are some productive things that can be worked on prior to being seen in the clinic.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
And
Um,
shout out Leap. Leap can really get you connected. Thank you in the
yeah,
chat. But yeah, I mean, Leap is a great program, especially as someone with a new diagnosis, of really providing education on some of those diet changes that can be made with the Mediterranean diet, as well as other, brain supporting activities. So My Alliance and Leap, they all tie right in together.
Yeah.
excellent. Thank you.
And I would add to that too, like Lindsay said, try not to, as difficult as it is, really engage in that catastrophic thinking because, you're in the right place, you're doing the right things to get towards a diagnosis and a treatment plan. And sometimes that just takes a little longer, of course, but just trying to be mindful about day to day and, trying to stay as positive as we can, knowing that, hopefully answers are forthcoming. So
Yeah. And you will not be abandoned after those answers are provided to
yeah,
you. There's
absolutely not.
support on the back end.
Melissa, Lindsay, you're definitely preaching to a sort of choir here. I think I'd like to believe that everybody on the call today knows about My Alliance and is a believer in all the great work that we do. But what happens, as we know it does, if we are concerned about a loved one, we want them to talk to someone at the memory clinic or on the CCN, and they're resistant to that. They don't want to do that. How can we navigate that situation?
I like to consider myself an advocate for those patients and sometimes even just that verbiage, this is you being able to take control of your health, and this is enabling you to take that power back. And I would say, well, why don't they want to engage? There's a reason behind it. Is it a fear? Is it a worry? We can't address it until we know. And so just, I think, being able to have that open, honest dialogue in a non-judgmental, in a calm fashion, approaching somebody at the right time, if they're like in the middle of doing the dishes and if things are hectic, let's not have a serious conversation. Let's wait, until a more appropriate time, you know, uh, listening to those worries, trying to address those fears.
Mhm.
Maybe we have to get somebody else involved. Maybe it's a friend or family member or a physician, a trusted third party to kind of help address, what we are concerned about, why we want, them to be seen, and, what their worries are.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree with all of that. There's always a root cause for behavior, and for a lot of patients that we work with, that resistance to seeking services can be related to feelings of denial or fear. Or, I always like to talk about this as a grief process. It really is, and so that can be closely tied to some of those behaviors that we see. Um, you know, People with dementia remain adults and we cannot force them to do anything. And so it's definitely a balance between respecting self-determination and also, kind of like Melissa was saying, um, encouraging them and educating them. But I always talk with families about, even if the person with the disease does not desire support, or they're not in a place to where they're open or ready for that, that doesn't mean that the care partner cannot receive support, and we definitely encourage that they do.
Very good. Okay. I've got, I think Lindsay and Melissa, you can probably see there's a couple of questions in the chat.
Mhm.
And if you wouldn't mind taking a look at those, we've got a person whose wife was diagnosed with Lewy body dementia and frontotemporal dementia. Can the CCN help this family navigate all that this diagnosis means and what to do and what to do about it all? Love to hear you all give the magic wand answer to that question, please.
I left mine in the other room. Sorry.
Yeah, don't listen to Kelly. That doesn't exist.
No,
But
it doesn't.
um, yes, so we a lot of times, our position, especially working with people initially post-diagnosis, it's helping decode some of that medical jargon and lingo that might be in the chart, and kind of reiterating through the diagnosis, the diagnostic visit, and helping decode maybe what the physician has indicated. So that's definitely something that we do. And once we have diagnosis, we can kind of be better prepared to talk about symptoms that you might be seeing in your loved one, or things that, behaviors that you might see down the road in the future, and kind of give that that overall view. And, for everyone, it's not black and white. It does vary from person to person, but there's definitely a lot of preparedness discussions that we have of what might I be facing in the future.
Yeah, and
Excellent.
really, like Lindsay said, the day to day, that planning to avoid crisis is a big
Mhm.
part of our role. We want people to be fully aware of possibilities, knowing that everyone's situation is different. Diagnoses can impact people on different levels, and so the better we get to know, I think, the family and the person who's diagnosed, the better we can offer suggestions and support. And I want to mention before it gets lost here in the chat, we have an amazing library now, a resource for caregivers and persons diagnosed in the memory clinic. So when you're checking in or out at that front desk, just zip on, turn around right behind you, and it is there. And you can check those out for free of charge. So
Yeah.
another great resource.
Yeah. Monique, thank you for the feedback. I love to hear that. And Beth, our team does offer both in-person support groups and virtual support groups. We have a whole page of each. Those can be found on our website. We have 16 support groups in total through the KU ADRC, and all but 2 of them are facilitated by members of our Cognitive Care Network team. So plenty of options for anyone.
Great, thank you. And I did put a link to the support groups in the chat.
Oh,
So you should be
wonderful.
able to scroll down and get those. I also put a link to the Why video, which is on YouTube, and you can watch that anytime. It's worth watching one time for sure, and multiple times also for sure. There's something new to jump onto every time you watch it. Something we find meaningful and hopeful. So Lindsay and Melissa, thank you so much. You have been real heroes in answering these questions. I wanted to, given that today is December 5th, get your thoughts about how folks can manage family dynamics as we have lots of holidays coming up and lots of times when we think families will get together, or even if families can't get together. How do we navigate heightened emotions during this special time of year?
Mhm.
Yeah, great question. I would say, we have to have realistic expectations about what is possible and what isn't. And maybe the holidays will look hopefully a little less hectic than they did the last year. Maybe we don't have to do everything on our own or invite everyone. Maybe we can utilize Zoom. Maybe we, move our dinner to brunch, just really trying to think about what could make the day just as enjoyable being around family without anything that might be too overwhelming or overstimulating. What's the point, right, of getting together if we're all stressed? And so just acknowledging that, and I think not being afraid to set boundaries within what is possible and what isn't. Maybe if you have family that you haven't seen in a while, maybe giving them a heads up on what's kind of going on the situation so that people aren't coming to you with questions or they're not surprised if things look a little bit different. Um, that would be my biggest suggestion, is just realistically what's possible.
Yeah. It sounds dramatic, but I always encourage families to have a game plan going into the holidays. Sometimes it does take more planning. And so, like Melissa said, it's really about expectation management, not only for person living with the disease, but also for the care partner. Sometimes that might look like, we're doing smaller, more broken up, or shorter gatherings to address, overstimulation or capacity for conversation and navigating those situations. It might be that, hey, we have a big family, and it's difficult for my loved one to identify everyone who's here. So we just normalize wearing a little name tag. Everyone at the function wears a name tag. It might be identifying an escape route prior to getting together to ensure that there's a quiet place that the person can kind of decompress in, to still be a part of the gathering, but also have that option to take a step away if needed. So it's definitely about being creative, and I think having some of those uh, prior conversations.
And maybe breaking it up, right? I kind of like
Mhm,
that idea, Lindsay, of like, we treat each holiday as like this one big day and there's all this
mhm,
anticipation, but truly it's a season. And so
mhm.
if we can just maybe break those celebrations up into smaller segments, or they look a little bit different, but we get to celebrate longer. So
Mhm. It'd probably be good for all of us and our stress levels,
I
honestly.
think I would like this. Maybe I'm making my own plan right now. I don't know.
Yes.
I love it. You both touched on some things that are part of the next question I had for you, which is about self-care, whether you are a person who is experiencing some cognitive change, or a person caring for someone experiencing cognitive change, or both, or something else. What suggestions might you offer, for making sure we put our own oxygen mask on first?
hmm Yeah. I have conversations every day about being gracious with ourselves, which again, it's one of those things that's easier said than done. But for many of us here in this group today, you guys are doing this for the first time, right? Whether it be having a diagnosis or being a care partner and acting in that role. So really treating yourself with patience and grace. Um, and a support system is huge. Identifying your support system early on and not thinking of the traditional, okay, just my nuclear family or my friends, thinking about, cognitive care network or resources at KU, things like that. Um, Not avoiding self-isolation, I think is a really big thing. Um, for a lot of families, dementia and the topic of brain changes can feel taboo. It can feel very stigmatized. And the cool thing that we can do is we can continue to destigmatize, normalize, have conversations about what's going on in our own life or our family's life. And that's a form of advocacy. And so that helps break down some of those stigmas that people have. So I say communicate, engage, um, don't pull away, don't shy away.
Yeah, don't isolate. Self-care is more than just the, facial mask we put on at night, isn't it? So that is a big part of routine for many of us. I love it. But, talk with people. Don't think that you're alone in this. Who can you turn to talk with? I think self-care doesn't have to be a solo thing. What are some activities you've enjoyed in the past? How do we get back to that? How do we get back to living? We're whole people. We're more than a diagnosis. And I think if we can approach really any disease in that perspective, then we can say, okay, well, there's a lot of positive things as well that I can look at. So some gratitude, some grace for yourself, some mindfulness about just trying to stay in the day to day. Also, a lot easier said than done.
Mhm.
It's
Yes.
practice.
Melissa, you mentioned at the start of our program, I think that you are in the memory clinic.
Yes.
And I think in our emails planning for today, you mentioned working as part of the health system. And then Lindsay, maybe you're in a different role. Can you all explain to me, really, and everyone on the
Mhm.
call what that means?
Yeah,
Yeah.
so our team is as a whole, right? We are the Cognitive Care Network team, but half of us, well, okay, so there's 3 social workers and 1 nurse who we are a part of the health system. So our clients are exclusively per- people that have come through that are clients at the memory clinic, the KU Memory Clinic, whereas Lindsay and the rest of the community team works with, of course, clients that come through the memory clinic, as well as, Lindsay, can you kind of expand on, you guys have clinics all
Yes.
over.
Yes. So the social workers that are part of the community team, we actually partner with primary care practices in rural Kansas. And the goal of that is to increase access to those dementia specialized support services. So essentially traveling to these rural communities to provide the services in person that we typically provide here at the clinic or in the KC metro area. I believe that we have about 18 community partners and physicians and practices that we go see. So that is just an additional part of our clinic caseload. We also see those folks in the community too.
Yeah, they travel quite a bit and pretty extensively. I mean, as far as Waukene, last I had checked, basically the
Yeah.
Colorado border. So, you'll find your CCNs out and about in many places in Kansas. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I really want us to get a bus, a branded KU
Yeah.
ADRC bus at some point, but it's still working on that. So
I've been trying to get t-shirts for a while. So if we can get a t-shirt as well as the bus, let's
Yes.
do
Tina,
this.
Tina, help us out.
Tina, I see you.
I was just gonna say, at the university I worked at before, we had these like magnetic designs that we would stick on our vehicles as we were driving
yeah.
through. So that would be a way to like keep your own vehicle and not have to drive a van like all over the
Love
place
it.
and just still have some branding on there. But yeah, just need funding and we'll get you whatever you want.
Something. Listen,
That'd be
I
great.
know when I was a state employee back in 2011, there was a helicopter that I think the governor and the secretary on aging used to ride around in. I never got to ride in the helicopter, but maybe one day. Maybe one
That is
day.
so cool.
Yes. Get the word out somehow.
That's right.
Shameless plug, shameless plug.
That's right. That's right. Okay. Anybody else in the chat, if you have questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and unmute yourself or drop your question in the chat. Please, everybody, make sure to take a look at the links in the chat for our support groups, for our patient and family resources page, which tells you even more about how to get in touch with Melissa and Lindsay and the other folks on the CCN team. I've got a link to the movie Why on there. So make sure you check that out if you have not already. Melissa and Lindsay, one of my favorite things, I suppose this is okay for me to say, one of my favorite things that your team does every Friday is the CCN Song of the Week that goes out to the staff. I think to keep our spirits up, to get us, in a good mood. So anyway, I just wanted to publicly thank you for that Song of the Week. I missed it last week. I think we didn't have it for Thanksgiving, but I'm very excited for tomorrow to find out what the Song of the Week is. Oh, I see Mike S has a hand raised. So Mike, go for it. You can unmute if you like.
Thank you. I did have a question. There we go. Let me get my microphone where it belongs. I was really interested in the comment I saw in here, Linda to everyone. This correlates with empathy/empathy training. As a caregiver, that seems like something very important. Is that an actual program offered, or can you expand upon that?
For Linda or for Melissa and Lindsay?
Whoever that was.
Well, that was me, Linda. I'm not part of the team, but I'm actually doing a project and I work for the health system about empathy. And also I had done some work with the Center for Practical Bioethics in their pain management team. And one of the recommendations I had made is for physicians to get empathy training, because if you look in the journals, actually that is being done. It has been correlated with better outcomes. But empathy is something that we need not only, in the workplace, but in our personal relationships. It's about really being able to tune into other people's feelings, getting their perspective, and interacting in a compassionate and caring way. Yeah.
Well, where I've encountered this mostly is, so it's my wife that has been diagnosed with mild cognitive disorder, but our children have a very difficult time empathizing with her, what she's going through. I do too, because it's hard to know, okay, is this her being her, or is her getting old, or is it whatever the diagnosis is, Lewy body, whatever, is that what is causing, and how do I empathize with what she's going through?
Actually, I pulled together some links for 3 empathy tests. I'm actually looking at the project right now. Some free empathy tests that are online. I can give it to Kelly and she can determine whether it's appropriate to send out, since this is not my forum. I just brought that up.
That'd be great. I think I probably failed that test, but
it also tells you what you can do to, improve. So it's really just like, there's some tests. I know one from Harvard where it talks about our internal biases that are invisible even to us. So just
Yes.
having that awareness, I think I personally am always trying to improve myself and learning more and more. So the more I learn, the more I realize I don't know. So it's just
Yeah.
No, and
Thank you.
yeah, thank you both for sharing that. I think, Mike, the first step is you're self-aware, right? You're talking about it, you're starting the conversation. And that's a big part of what our team does is we don't have specific empathy training, but we are social workers, and that's just a huge cornerstone of our worldview and outlook of how people should be approached. For people who've been married for decades or, known each other for just as long, it's definitely a transition in how we relate to one another. So there's definitely going to be growing pains within that. And you might not ever be able to separate who your wife has been historically from disease, from just aging. That's all her, right? And so it's really about approaching people where they're at and willingness to try to learn. It's not going to be perfect, and it takes time. But I think that even just mentioning the question shows that you're self-aware and it's something you'd like to improve on.
It looks like there was a question in the chat about how to connect with CCN services. We get our referrals on the health system side through our physicians and our nurse practitioners and our PAs. So when someone is, a patient through the memory clinic, they can then be referred to the CCN. Lindsay, I don't know if the community has a little bit different of it'd be through anybody coming through the practices that you guys partner with.
Correct.
There
Or
is
support groups who
mhm.
maybe aren't connected with a social worker we have some people who engage in our support groups who actually aren't a part of our clinic. So we also see those who are seeking to establish care that find us through support groups.
I did see on our website, and I put the link in the chat, there's a link that ends with "I have questions," and there's a phone number and email for one of your colleagues, Amy Yeager. So assuming that is still correct, folks can reach out to her per what's on the website for questions by phone or by email. So I'd say maybe start there, and if that changes, we'll get that updated. But it looks like that's one way. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much, Melissa and Lindsay, for being with us today and sharing such great resources. We do have one more weekly webinar for 2024, and that'll be next Thursday, 12/12. We will have Amanda Szabo-Reed and the COMET study as our final webinar for the year. So you can come learn about how the exercise trial is going, maybe some of what we're learning, what we're looking for. I think some of you have probably seen on our social media our requests for men in particular to participate in the COMET study. We are always looking for gentlemen. But the truth is, I guess we've learned over the last year or so that when we ask for men, we get both men and women who respond to the call for research participants. When we ask for women only, the men think that we're not talking to them. So, we've become a bit strategic about what we're looking for. And what the truth is, we're always looking for people to participate in all kinds of research. We've got a couple of really exciting studies that I'm hopeful I'll be able to announce in my alliance coming up pretty soon that we're going to need lots of folks for, folks of all ages, all genders, all situations. And there at least one I can think of that is unlike anything you've heard of. I won't say anything more. I'll keep you in suspense. But stay tuned to the My Alliance newsletter because we will be able to keep you informed of those. Okay. So once I'm done here in just a moment, I will process this recording. So this will be available to watch. Again, feel free to share it with anybody. Melissa, Lindsay, thank you, and all of the CCN team. Thank everybody who was here. Thanks for your great questions and your interest. And we'll see you next Thursday, 12/12 for another webinar. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Okay.